very rarely are you going to need to do a calf raise in life. Maybe when you're really reaching up for the cookies, right? But you're going to have to squat, right? You squat every day. So if we can train that movement pattern, then you're becoming more functional by nature. And that's what you need in order to not only strengthen your body, but to have longevity. Hey, what's going on all? Welcome to this week's episode of Conquer the Day. I am your host, Brian Pickowitz.
And I'm Lindsay Pickowitz.
And today we are talking about streamlining your fitness, finding the most effective and optimal plan for you to get in shape and really start exercising this year. We want to break through some of the noise and really show you the optimal training plan for you to not only get the most out of the time you have, but really build the strong, healthy body that you want in this season and beyond.
Yeah, it's exciting because if you already have the desire to do this, then all we need to figure out is what do you need to know? What do you actually need to know? And what can we do to bridge the gap to actually get you to do it? Right. And that's really what role we play for our clients is we bridge the gap between them knowing what to do and them actually doing it. So we want to give you everything that we can today without overloading you to make sure that you can actually take action and implement. We're even going to give you a very special gift in this episode so that you can literally implement as of today if you'd like. So stay tuned. We'll share that at the end and we'll give you all the details.
Yeah, and one of the things that we're talking about before this podcast is why it's so important that our physical health is the first pillar of our growth, right? If you're not getting the most out of yourself in this season of life and you're looking at your business, you're looking at your career and you're saying, man, I want to get to the next level, but I don't know what I need to do, right? The first place that we believe you start is with your body, with your health, with getting your energy up, with getting your confidence up, with really optimizing how you show up for yourself. And there's 3 areas that we can talk about and we've talked about throughout this podcast that really show up for professionals, business owners, the people that we know need to continue to advance so they can create more for everyone else in their life. Starts with nutrition, right? We talked about that last week, the way you fuel your body. Garbage in, garbage out. If you're not fueling your body in a way that makes you feel optimal and gives you that energy you need, it's going to be really hard to perform. The second area, which we're going to talk about today, is your fitness, the way you move, the way you take care of your physical state. One of the things that we love the most about fitness is not just that it makes you feel great because you look great. That's a bonus. That's a real great first pillar. But the more you get into training, the more consistent you are, you start to see that it improves your mental health. It improves the way you think. It makes you clearer, makes you sharper. It also gives you this edge, right? One of the things I've learned in my life is that the more I push myself, doesn't mean more time, but the more I push myself, it keeps me growing because that's the reminder that I can do hard things. I can continue to have that positive outlet. And so we want to continue to see you get that through this podcast and through the things that we share. Because if we don't have our physical state, we don't have anything. And the last piece is our mindset or the mental habits that we have. Because if we're not mindful of the way that we're viewing ourselves or the lens that we have on our world, it's really easy to fall into the trap of feeling like things can't change. Things are going to continue to be the way that they've been in the past. And the only way the past gets repeated is if we live there. So we have to continue to condition our mindset. And I share this briefly because these 3 areas do allow you to perform better in your business. They do allow you to perform better in your work. They do make you a better leader. They allow you to connect more with your partner. They pull all the pieces together. And so that's really what we believe at the Fitness Project. And we want to start sharing this message to you as you're going to the new year so you can start adopting these 3 areas for yourself and then refine them as we go.
Well said. And as we kick off this conversation about training, the first thing that we want to hit is why don't we do it, right? What keeps us from implementing something that we know is so good for us? That does help us feel better. That does increase our longevity or help us live longer. Why don't we do it? Well, there are 3 very obvious barriers to success when it comes to implementing exercise. The first is time. This is an honest constraint. If you are a high-level professional or you have your own business and then you say you add on a family, your time is most likely already expended. By the time you wake up, get yourself ready, get into work, and then you end your day, you have kids to take and cart around. I mean, it doesn't feel like there's a lot of extra time, right? So when you try to implement something, it can feel like a lot very quickly. The truth is, you don't need as much time as you think you do. And that is a really great thing, right? Because if I can tell you and we can tell you, hey, it actually is going to take about a third of the time commitment you think it does, then immediately you start to have stars in your eyes and feel like, okay, I could actually do this. That's what we hope. The second challenge that keeps us from implementing exercise is that we have a heavy load of responsibility. Now, you might say that this is an excuse, but I would say this is a real barrier, because if your bandwidth mentally is already at capacity because of how much you have on your plate, you have a team or a staff of 10 to 30 plus employees, and you also, again, have a family, then your mind is already pouring into and your energy is already pouring into so many other people. So by the time it could be your time to pour into yourself, maybe all you want to do is relax. You don't want to go work out. It feels like it's more energy, right? And then the third barrier that gets in our way is this internal feeling of resistance that keeps us from taking action. This is something that I'm sure you're so familiar with. I know I am. I know Brian is. But it's that stickiness, that challenge to actually get ourselves into action. And when we have that feeling of resistance, the challenge is that we can feel it, we can experience it, and we can overcome it for a little bit with the whole just do it mindset. But eventually that resistance wins because it's unwavering, especially if you don't know why you feel resistance. A lot of times resistance comes from this, we'll say, disbelief that it's going to be worth it, or the disbelief that it's going to make a difference physically. Maybe it's not going to get you results, right? There's some uncertainty there, and that creates conflict internally. Now, if you combine all of these challenges, the challenge of true constraints on time, the challenge of constraints on your bandwidth because of your responsibility, and you have that internal resistance because you're not really sure if what you're doing is going to stick or work long haul, then that leads to things like winging it. Saying, all right, let's just go do it. Let's download a YouTube plan, or let's download a workout. Let's go and just do the thing. That is what we call winging it. And then that might also lead to overcommitting, right? If you look at your schedule and you think, there's no way I can fit this in, sometimes our mind plays this trick on us where then we say, well, I'll figure it out. Let's just send it. But really, over the long haul, you and I both know it doesn't stick more than a week to 2 weeks because it's just too much. We're not really sure what else to do, right? So we just keep going. And then sometimes we also overdo it. We don't recognize where our body's actually at and how long it's been since we worked out. We'll say that hard or that at that level. So we end up burning ourselves out further than we already are burnt out because, again, we've overcommitted, we're overdoing it, it's too much. And then usually that leads to falling back to what's easy. Maybe we say, okay, well, I'm just going to go for walks every day. Okay, I'm just going to do this. I'm just going to do that. The challenge with that is if we stay at that level of, we'll say, what's easy, then we might not get results. We'll plateau.
Yeah, and it's also this idea of overcommitting to what we can do right now, right? We might be doing more than our body currently allows us to do. And I see this misconception show up for a lot of men. A lot of men have this idea of what they used to be able to do 5 years ago, but they haven't been active or they haven't been consistent for 5 years. And so they go to the gym and they say, okay, I'm going to go and try to bench again. And they don't have an upgraded approach for their joints, their flexibility. They're not training for the body they have. And so this leads them to pushing their body greater than their body can handle right now. And so that increased workload in their current body leads them to either A, get hurt, right? They get hurt, they have an injury, something doesn't feel right, and they don't have the knowledge of what to do next. So they're like, well, if what I know what to do hurts me, then I guess I can't go and work out. Or they might put themselves in this position where they burn themselves out because what they're doing is greater than their body can handle right now. So they're saying, oh my God, I feel like garbage. I need to go to the gym and start working out. And then the reward for that behavior, because they're pushing too hard, is they feel even worse when they leave because they're so sore and they're not adapting to the body they have. So if we're not mindful of meeting ourselves where we're at, we're going to end up pushing our body greater than it can handle.
Now that we've discussed the barriers to success, how do we take that next step and actually build a training program that helps us, we'll say, optimize our time, gives us a little bit more bandwidth, and maybe is easy to overcome that resistance to that exercise so that it becomes a part of what we do every week. That's where we want to go next. There's something at the Fitness Project we call our optimal training blueprint. Now, before we talk about specifics, what do you think defines optimal?
An optimal training plan is going to have 3 key components. First, it's going to be effective, meaning it gets you to the result that you want to accomplish. The second is going to be sustainable, meaning it meets you where you're at, but it allows you to build over time. What you're doing in the gym today, you should be able to do 10 years from now, right? So if we're really thinking of what's optimal, doing things that you feel like, hey, that's going to be something I can't do as I get older, it's not necessarily optimal. It might be effective if you're an athlete, but it might not be effective if you're just getting back into the gym. So ideally, I want to be able to start with an exercise that allows me to continue to progress. And then the last piece is it needs to be easy to implement. If you don't feel like you can implement something, right, it might be effective and it might be something that's sustainable, but the barrier to entry might be too far for you. So we have to be able to meet ourselves in all 3 of these phases. And when we start doing that, we start to see that results are a lot easier to get than we think. Now, the specifics around the optimal training plan for you, the optimal training blueprint, is first, you need to understand how much time you're going to commit to it. So when we talk about effectiveness with time, right, the average person who's looking to maybe lose 20 pounds, who's getting back into the gym, you do not need to train 6 days a week. Ideally, you would be training anywhere between 2 to 4. I say 4 because, you could do 5 if you're really committed and you have the schedule. But for most people, starting off with 2 days is optimal because you're not doing anything right now. Right? So if you were to go to the gym 2 days a week or 3 days a week, you could get in all major muscle groups, all major movements, and you could still do walking on the days you're not at the gym. You could still have a step count goal. But ideally, we're doing 2 or 3 strength and functional movements that we're going to talk about here in a moment. But that allows you to commit to the amount of time it requires. And those workouts should take 30 to 45 minutes. You shouldn't be at the gym more than 60 minutes. Now, maybe the first day you're figuring out where all the equipment is, everything like that. Understandable. But once you build it after, say, a week or 2, and you get in the flow, I'm in and out of the gym. 30 to 45 minutes. Boom. And if you can commit to that, what's great is by meeting yourself in the 2 or 3 days, you might be able to get to the 4th, right? And maybe, who knows, maybe it's 3 months from now or even a couple weeks from now, you're like, hey, realistically, I found a better way to optimize my time, and I can start putting in a 5th optional workout in per week. But if we start off with those 2 or 3 workouts, that's ideal. Now, the pieces of the workouts that are going to happen in those 30 to 45 minutes should follow this mechanism. So the first piece is we want to be starting off with some kind of zone 2 cardio. Now, this is advantageous for our cardiovascular health, but more important than that, this is our time to check in with ourselves. If I want to go to the gym and be effective, I want to prime my mind. I want to use this time to put on a motivational video that gets me in state. I want to put on my favorite song. I want to use this as my time to disconnect from what I've been doing throughout the day and check in. And that should take 5 to 10 minutes. Now, the great thing is also loosening up your body. You're getting your heart rate up, right? You're getting in state to go and train, but you need to treat the gym like a sport. You don't just show up on the field. This is your time where you show up and you get ready to train. So we ideally want to program 5 to maybe 12 minutes of cardio, depending on what you want to do. But the goal of cardiovascular training is not to burn calories. It's to get the body right. It's to get the heart right. It's to get our mind right. And once I've done that, second thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put in some functional mobility training. So imagine, if you will, you're going to go and start bench pressing. You need to warm up those muscle groups that are going to be required in that exercise for you to perform that movement optimally. So a lot of people, they just go to the gym and their warm up for a bench or a squat is, I'm going to do a push-up, or I'm going to do a bodyweight squat, or, if I'm going to do bench, I'm just going to bench the bar. It's like, that's not effectively opening up your body. So we're going to do 3 or 4 mobility exercises for the target muscles we're going to train that day to open up the body, to prime those muscle groups, also to offset everything we've been doing throughout the day. So if you're going to go and squat and you've been sitting in a chair all day long, your glutes need to be re-engaged. Yeah, you need to activate your glutes, which would be done through a glute bridge, some kind of hip hydrant, right? We're doing these exercises that aren't very challenging, but that get our body ready to perform the exercise that we're going to go do. And then once I've done those exercises, right, once I've performed them consistently, maybe 4 exercises, 2 sets of 10 reps, now my body's ready and I can go and do my workout, right? And now what's great is between the cardio and the mobility training, this has taken me maybe 15 minutes, maybe 16 minutes, depending on how I programmed it. And now I have almost 30 minutes to go and train. And that's really all I need. 30 minutes of very effective and focused time. Now, I'm not going to be scrolling through Instagram while I'm training. I'm not going to be texting people. If you have to handle a text message or a fire, that's okay. But realistically, that's my time to go to the gym and train. I'm going to take it seriously. And so when I'm there, what I'm going to do is I'm going to usually have 4 or 5 strength training exercises that we program for a client. And those should be functional, at least in nature. So ideally, if I'm going to say train my legs, right, I'm going to start with something that's functional, which would be a squat. And then I might do some kind of hinge or a deadlift. Not necessarily a power deadlift, but something that's engaging my hips in that way. I might end up doing some kind of lunge or some kind of hip extension movements. But I'm going to do something that's more functional in nature. And then I would end with maybe like a calf raise or a leg extension. But I want to be focusing on prioritizing those functional movements. And when we say a functional movement is an exercise you perform that is going to mimic daily life. So you're not going to, very rarely are you going to need to do a calf raise in life. Maybe when you're really reaching up for the cookies, right? But you're going to have to squat, right? You squat every day. So if we can train that movement pattern, then you're becoming more functional by nature. And that's what you need in order to not only strengthen your body, but to have longevity. Because if you can get functional, let's say in your 30s or 40s or 50s, that's going to show up in your 70s and 80s. So again, if you want to do bicep curls, that's great. Put that at the end of your workout, after you've trained a row and a pull down, things like that. But again, these functional movements are focused on resistance training, and they're also progressive by nature. So progressive overload is the name of the game. If I can look at what my body can do today and then say, hey, next week, how can I add 2 extra reps? Or how can I add 5 pounds? How can I consistently look at my sets and my workouts and say, how can I continue to get stronger and better? That's how you add lean tissue. That's how you build bone density. And that's how you really start to get the results you want in the gym. Most people don't think that they can get results in the gym because they go to the gym and they do the same exercises with the same reps and the same weights over and over again. We need to be looking at the body and saying, okay, how did I do this exercise on the last set, right? Let's say I'm doing a goblet squat and I did 10 pounds and I got 12 reps and I felt like, hey, that was like a 5 out of 10 for my perceived exertion rate, how hard I felt like it worked. Well, that's probably a sign that I can get 15 pounds. Maybe I get 15 pounds, 12 reps, and I said, hey, you know what? That was like a 6.5 out of 10. Okay, well, maybe I can get 20 pounds. And so I try to do 20 pounds, like, you know, I got 10 reps. Like, that's fantastic. That's how I progressed. Whereas if I would just stayed at that 10 pounds, not really pushing my body, which means I'm not taxing the muscle. I'm not going to build strength, and I'm not going to build that lean tissue. So again, you're doing this all in a very systematic way, but it's only taking you 4 exercises, 5 exercises. We're able to train the whole body. And then once we've done that, right, it's like that 45-minute barrier, that 30-minute barrier, depending on how much time you have. Obviously, you can downsize it, or you can modify it however you need. But now I'm going to stretch, right? I'm going to offset maybe some of the tightness I've just done. Like if I just benched, I'm going to go and stretch out my chest to make sure that I'm going back into my postural alignment. And it's also going to help me recover faster. So that is the optimal training blueprint. I'm going to start with cardio, get my mind right, get my body warmed up, 5 to 12 minutes. I'm going to do some mobility exercises for, let's say, 3 to 5 minutes, really moving through it, just getting my body primed. I'm going to do 4 or 5 strength exercises that are ideally more functional in nature, and then maybe work on aesthetics in the last couple, sets. And I'm going to stretch. And if you do that, what's great is now you have a foundation.
Mm-hmm.
Now you have a foundation to build off of. And that's how everyone should go to the gym, especially when they're working on the consistent elements of how to put this in their life.
Mm-hmm. And you can see how different this would be from maybe something that you've done in the past. And it's certainly something that is different than what I did in the past. When I first started exercising in college, or I started to, we'll say, try to go to the gym, whatever that meant at the time, I had a routine that was very ineffective, inefficient, and it probably mimicked a lot of what either you've done or what you've seen other people do too, where you go into the gym and you hop onto a cardio machine for, let's say, 30 minutes, maybe 40. I did 45. And then once you get off of that and you're sweating, then you might stretch a little bit, because now you're active and moving. You imagine that stretching before you work out is the best. Now you see that mobility is actually better than stretching at the front. Stretching is better at the back. And then you might go into a few different, we'll say, machines, right? For women, we stick to the machines for the most part. And if they do the machines at all, they're doing ab movements. They might be doing some curls, or they might do some body weight squats for 30 minutes. And then they're done and they walk out, right? What we just described, the structure, it takes having knowledge or expertise in some capacity, but when you know more and you know how to execute in a way that's structured, it's very effective, it's very efficient, it's sustainable, it's actually more fun because you feel like you really know what you're doing and you see progress every week, and it's really easy to implement because it's only, like you said, 2 to 4 times a week max. That routine I just outlined, I was doing that when I was quote unquote at my best, 6 days a week. At minimum 3 days, at max 6, but I never got results. So being able to implement something that's effective really does make it more fun, more engaging, and much easier to implement as you go into 2024. With that said, we do have a very special gift for you so that you can start to implement this new structure to your training and actually feel like you can gain some momentum and know what you're doing. We built out an optimal training blueprint for you that you can utilize this coming week. It's going to include 2 full body training sessions that you can implement and really see how this structure flows for you. So how can they get that?
All you have to do is click the link below in the show notes, and we'll make sure you can download this PDF for you. Again, it's a free boost for you as you're looking at the new year, so you can start implementing some of these strategies and really get your body, your mind, and your health in a position where you can perform your best. So
Awesome.
We hope this is helpful. We hope you've gained a lot. Leave your comments or reviews on the podcast so we can know how this was helpful for you. And also, if you love this podcast, please share it with a friend. Send it to someone you know who would really benefit from it so that we can continue to spread this message. If you're a listener to the podcast, that's really the best way you can help us out, is really continuing to grow this culture and this community of people who want to not only perform their best, but live their best too. So on that note, thank you for being here. We appreciate your time and attention, and go out and conquer your day.
Cheers.
Cheers.